And thank you to everyone for joining me. My name is Matt Forrest. I head up our solutions engineering team here at CARTO. I just want to take a quick minute to introduce everyone. So I'll kind of call out your name. If you want to give a quick 30 seconds on who you are, then we'll jump into the panel. So I'm just going to go kind of around the Brady Bunch screen here. Geoff, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt. Hey, everyone. My name is Geoff Michener. I'm the CEO and founder of dataPlor. We focus on international POI data. And that will do it, Matt. Quick and simple.
Awesome. Cool. Antonio
Cotroneo. That does rhyme. And I am the technical content strategy director here at OmniSci, focusing primarily on product marketing and developing technical content to help enable our customers and users.
Awesome. And last but not least, Joe.
Maybe least. I don't know. You got such an impressive panel here. Wow. Let's see. My name is Joe Karlsson. I'm a developer advocate and software engineer, and I work for a little company called SingleStore, formerly known as MemSQL. We support geospatial tech. I'm formerly worked at MongoDB as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Let's jump right in. So kind of the first question I wanted to open up to everyone, why do you think the role of location data and spatial data science has grown so much recently? And also, why is it so important for organizations today to actually bring on spatial data scientists and practice spatial data science?
Well, I think I'll go ahead and just jump right in. So in terms of why is it really important? I mean, we've seen sort of the explosion of spatiotemporal data in general. I mean, whether it be SafeGraph, companies like yours, Geoff, and everything in between. I mean, most organizations that we've observed in the marketplace today that are capturing large and small data in some way, shape, or form, that data has some sort of spatiotemporal component. And because that data is becoming more prevalent, and obviously, and I'm sure everybody here has heard this over and over again, but proliferation of sensors and data being collected on our mobile devices and all those different things, being able to interrogate that information and gather some type of value out of it for many different purposes, obviously elevates the sort of role of the spatial data science in our industry.
Yeah, and I'll kind of echo what you're saying too, Antonio, is I feel like, especially in the international POI space or just, POI space in general, there are a lot more use cases than ever before, ranging from the traditional geospatial of mapping, needing to know where to go, making sure that location is correct. But now you're seeing it from a CPG use cases, financial services, sales and marketing who need to enter into businesses and have correct information. And now even retail and site planning. So I feel like geospatial as a whole is much broader than the world imagined even 10 years ago.
No, I totally agree. I don't have much else to add. I think that's just specialization based on your specific geolocation is super important. And I think that's that the one size fits all approach to making one solution for everybody doesn't work anymore. Customers are demanding content based on their specific location for more and more industries. So yeah, people are having to slip into it. I think it's one of those things too that people think is an easy problem to solve until you start jumping into it. And obviously, right, it just balloons exponentially in difficulty the more you jump into it.
Yeah, and I like what you said about people kind of sliding into it. They find themselves in geospatial, maybe not knowing they were, or people have come from a geospatial background and are having to change or shift skill sets to kind of match where the technology is going to. So I think it's kind of both things are definitely happening there.
Well, absolutely. I mean, this panel is about hiring, right? And the thing is it's hard to hire people who specialize in it. They're hard to find, they're expensive, and everyone wants them. And I think it's more common to find people who are slipping into that field, or kind of coming across it. I think we're going to get into this later a little bit, but for me, finding people who I can who are excited and willing and capable of sliding into that and learning it, I think is the most important part for hiring. Unless you're willing to shell out the time and money to find someone who's hyper specializes in that specialty.
Yeah, and to that same point about the sliding component is I mean the sort of lines between spatial data science and data science or GIS, I feel like those things are really starting to come down in a lot of ways, those walls that we sort of separated or segregated ourselves into, over the last 15 years. I feel like that's kind of dissolving a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, and that brings me to the next big question is, okay, why we're all here. What are the big challenges for actually, when you do for finding and hiring and maybe even so more developing skill sets for spatial data scientists?
Yeah, I'll kind of give a shot at this because being an early stage startup, one, as Joe mentioned, unless you have big budgets, you can't really find some of these unicorns, right? Or whatever we want to call it. And so what we really focus on is finding people that have more of a hard science background. So maybe it's in finance, statistics, computer science, where we know that they have some sort of logic, right? And if we can get them to that point and we know that, okay, they have this fundamental and they're curious and they're interested about these challenges and problems, there are lots of ways to learn and get into the space. Sometimes it takes coaching, sometimes it takes more effort than you wanted to put into it. But there are so many tools out there. For example, we use Code Academy or Codemy. I forget how they pronounce it exactly.
Code Academy.
Yeah, Code Academy.
So we've actually put most of our staff through this, whether they are in operations or data science, just because to get that fundamental is going to, or to get those fundamentals is going to put you in a much better place. And that's what we really work on if somebody is coming in a little bit more green.
I like that too, because I mean, our space and geography in general is multidisciplinary. Mm-hmm. And so getting folks from different, industries, backgrounds, educations, what have you, I think is great. I mean, being able to bring different perspective, into our space is only going to elevate the voices that work in it.
I'm going to go a different angle on this. I think you can find people on this too. If you do want to find, for me, I don't really give a shit about what you've done before. I don't care about if you have a degree in geospatial computer science problems, you have a PhD in it. I do not care. I care about what kind of problems you're solving and what kind of open source contributions you're doing. And I think an interesting way to find people in this space is to look on GitHub, right? Look on projects like Leaflet or some other open source projects and contact them. They might be willing to do it or reach out. They're probably working in the space if they're doing that open source work. But getting involved with those communities is a good way to and especially depending on how involved your company or product is in the geospatial space, getting involved with those open source projects is a good way to start getting a hiring pipeline into your company as well.
Yeah,
contributing,
good
paying money, actively being involved in that community. It can all help increase your standing in. Because you want, as a developer, you want to work for a company that's going to help increase your pedigree in that space. Mm-hmm. What's going to make me more money and more marketable in the future? And if you're working for a tech company that's actively being involved and contributing to the geospatial space, that's interesting. You got my attention.
Yeah, good points. I think one of broadly talking about geospatial, I think it has one of the most far-reaching and really active communities out there. There's so many people that are talking to each other, sharing ideas and contributing. Jump in, start talking and start sharing those ideas. And it doesn't matter where you came from, right? If you're a data analyst and you start picking up SQL skills and then you're transferring that into spatial SQL, or if you're a data scientist that maybe is writing Python and they're starting to add, different skill sets for geospatial that way, I think all of those are valid ways to kind of enter in. So, and ultimately, you said, where's the value you're bringing? What does that look like? And then, as you said, how do we develop and grow? I think are really important pieces too. That kind of leads, like I said, and I'm glad this conversation is really flowing in a nice way. Backgrounds, I think there's sort of the traditional backgrounds in terms of coming from a geography program or some of those different pieces. What are those backgrounds? Maybe where have you seen folks come from non-traditional geo backgrounds that have come into the space and jumped in? And what does that look like?
Good question. I have, I guess, a story about this because I think this is an interesting way of looking at it. Is with our company, we use a lot of human verification processes because it's international data. You can't just use computers to fix it. There's a lot of challenges. And so we use a lot of humans. And one of these individuals who was an explorer and validator named Jorge on our team, That's where he started, was just literally reviewing data and going row by row, seeing what's right, what's wrong. And then eventually he came to us and wanted to learn more. And we got him more programs, right? We got him to learn SQL. We then got him to learn, and now he's actually learning Ruby. And we've just been empowering him over the past 2 years, where he started as somebody who was doing data entry, and now he's actually pulling SQL requests, doing a lot of the hard science work. And that just took dedication, not just from us, more importantly from him, right? And that he wanted to learn, he wanted to be a part of it. And I feel like that's something where if you can find that sort of talent who has the curiosity, who has the drive, and who wants to learn, they're able to do anything. It's just about empowering them to do that, let them know they have a seat at the table, and probably most importantly, let them know they're going to make a lot of mistakes and they're not going to be punished for those mistakes. So that's just a story of like how we've developed somebody literally from the ground up, rather than, you know, sometimes we hire people who are at a certain level already.
Yeah, I definitely feel like we've found most success when elevating people within the org, or those that perhaps had like different roles within the org and showed an interest and frankly just raised their hand, you know, and wanted to get in and wanted to get involved. Some of my favorite stories, at least from my career, the people that I've seen sort of transition into the space. During my time at Esri, I had friends that had studied the arts or were artists themselves that had gotten into cartography and things like that. And I feel like that's like sort of where you see a lot of those transferable skills, or to Joe's point, like a way of seeing the world and just taking a different perspective and looking at how an individual actually solves problems. Like I think that kind of gets back to the multidisciplinary approach. You know, we kind of elevate these voices and these skill sets within the org. People have different backgrounds. They're going to find their own way to be able to solve those problems and bring their own perspective.
Yeah, I think the one piece we haven't really touched on is boot camps. I think generally boot camps are really hit or miss and like where the candidates are at. And I think that's going to get into the interview questions, which we're going to talk about in just a moment here. But I think the key thing that I think is an interesting way or thing about that is boot camps tend to get lots of people from interesting backgrounds and non-traditional CS backgrounds. You might even be able to find someone who like got a geography degree in their undergrad or something. You know what I mean? Like, don't be only limited to. Did you get one, Matt? Is that what you got?
Yeah.
So did I.
Undergrad,
exactly. Right. Like pulling those people into that space. I think. I don't know. And like, I think a long time ago, right? Like boot camps didn't exist, but like those spaces are something you should be open to. And I think, again, it's really hit or miss, and you have to get into the interview questions to kind of determine if that candidate is actually going to be up to be able to learn that stuff. But pulling in someone from that background, it'd be an excellent fit.
Yeah, totally. And I think one thing that's really important is, like our team that, has a very diverse background. Just looking at CARTO, we have folks that came from traditional geo, from marketing, from finance, like literally you name it. People have come from everywhere but found their way to this. And it's the skill development as you grow and change to learn, and the willingness to learn those different skills and things like that. So I think it's creating, like you said, those spaces are really important. One thing we do on our team is we have these different coding sessions where we actually just jump in, we're co-programming side by side, and actually trying to write and learn from each other in a very real-time setting. And I think the spaces and things like that where you can actually see other people solve these problems in real time are really, really valuable to actually practice and go through that. But yeah, that leads into kind of the next question is what are the types of questions you ask to ensure you're kind of finding the right folks that come in, and are there any sort of tests or things that you do to actually go through the interview process?
We don't use currently any sort of tests themselves. I know Joe dropped off for a second, but something that Joe had brought up is just this kind of spatial thinking or problem solving mindset. So I think actually approaching it from just asking questions, or perhaps even setting up exercises. That's something I really enjoy. Kind of project based sort of exploration of these things is being able to either set up a problem or a situation that allows the individual that you're interviewing to actually be able to walk through their problem solving process and get an idea of exactly how the steps that they take, how they sort of attack a problem, and attempt to solve it. So for me, those are the exercises that I like to see, actually applying their background, their understanding, their perspective to a problem.
Yeah, Antonio, that's a great point. And let's say I'll do it a little bit different of start to finish, and let's just say it's a highly qualified person that welcome back, Geoff. That we're
Thank you.
that we're looking to interview, right? Like came through Recruiter or some platform, and it looks like somebody who's just right up our alley. I'll actually take the first call. I come from an economics and business background, right? But I'm taking the first call as a CEO because if this person is talented, they're checking all the boxes on the resume. I want to have a conversation with them and tell them the story, from my point of view. I tell them how, look, we're looking for people who are going to have a seat at the table. We're looking for people who are going to challenge us. We're looking for people who are going to think outside the box and have extreme ownership. And as I walk them through this is really important for talented data scientists, talented engineers, and tell you the truth, just talented anybody, is if they feel like they have the seat at the table, they have autonomy, and they can do something, that's what I'll first start with in the interview. And that gets them psyched up, especially as a startup, where if I know, I don't know if we can afford them, they're going to have to be sold on the vision. They're going to have to be sold on, they're not just working on features all day. Instead, they're actually building a product. And that's usually our first step. And then from there, it goes down that technical route, such as pairing with our CTO, making sure, hey, how do you think about this? How do you feel about this? But that's like the first step I personally take if it's somebody who is highly talented in order to share the story.
I feel like everyone's just going to say, yes, I want that, though. I don't know. That doesn't tell you anything about the candidate. I don't know. Maybe. I think you got it like, I think the startup environment isn't for everyone. I think kind of setting the tone for what that looks like is important. But
correct.
I don't think you learn a lot about the candidate if they get through that step, though. I don't know. And so two things with this. Like you mentioned, like a technical interview round too. I want to put a lot of asterisks around that too, because I think depending on how you're doing the technical sourcing and technical screening of your candidates, you're going to suss people out. And we talked about this before too, knowing what you are and what skill level you want to come in, I think is really important for that round. Because you could be doing some very hyper-specific things around geospatial things in real time in an interview type setting. And I think you're going to weed out a lot of great candidates if you do that.
Yeah, you might have missed the preface there, Joe. I said when we're going for the hyper-talented people who came through a recruiter where we're looking to hire a senior data person, where it's like they already checked the boxes, they've worked at these companies for an amount of years, where we're making a big hire, not just a mid-level, junior, or in-between hire.
Gotcha. Cool. Good to know. Thanks for that context. We're doing this live, people. We're doing this live here. The other thing. So the technical interview. I actually don't do a lot of technical interviewing stuff for this. It depends on the skill level. Again, if you're doing high level, you probably want to do a little bit of technical screening. Personally, I'm more on the board of a behavioral type interview question, especially if you're coming in with someone with a non-traditional background. And the thing I want to see is the types of problems they're interested in solving, and have they been in this domain space before? Again, I don't care your background, I don't care what you've done before, but have you shown that you're working in the space or interested in these types of problems? And I want to see that through your work. I think everyone's going to say, if we train you up, can you learn this? Everyone's going to say yes. But I want to see evidence of that in their background, or them learning other skill sets kind of for a business purpose, and walk me through things like where they got stuck, how they solved those problems, what they did. And I want to see it, walk you through this.
Yeah, one thing that I look for is always, when you have a resume and you have technical skills, and there's kind of a few things you kind of check off. Yes, we're aligned in these different areas, these pieces. But if you have a portfolio where you've actually applied that and actually put some,
gold
some things together, that's huge. And if I can see that you built an app, or you have a notebook, or you have something on GitHub, and I can scan and see your code, that takes it to another level. And I think, showcasing that in terms of the interview piece, when, we do go through that, but it's, for me, the answer doesn't always look the same. And I try to structure it to say, show me where you can do something really interesting and impressive. If that's on the development of the solution and front end work, if that's actually going through and running different spatial modeling, if that's in data prep or what we call like geospatial data engineering. Show me where you are, where you're strong, and all those different pieces. And I think that leaving it kind of an open space to say, here's how I solve these problems, I think is really interesting. So cool. So we kind of went through the interview piece and all these different components. I think that the last piece is kind of developing talent and growing the space. Like I said, we do these different coding sessions and cross collaborative things. I think it's something that within the geospatial space is really important to continue to grow and develop. I think there's a lot, even as we're talking about spatial data scientists, today I think the space is growing, and we're seeing that in the need for geospatial data engineers or generalists of spatial analysts or geospatial developers. There's more and more roles that are growing out from that. There's a really great article I read that was, we need to break apart the data science space because data science is too general.
Totally.
So I think, how do we develop skills for the things that we're seeing, and how does that apply to these different areas? I think that's an interesting thing to dive into.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about this, but the sort of the cross training and being able to get people involved that are interested, that want to take part in them, into different projects that are like sort of maybe separate from perhaps their day to day, and getting them somewhat uncomfortable. I think that's what gives you opportunity to grow, when you sort of kind of push into a space that perhaps you don't know all that well. Perhaps it is someone that's coming in with, perhaps they don't have a great deal of geospatial data engineering, and they, are really interested in perhaps, in GDAL, for instance, and getting a little more experience in that space. Well, getting them involved with people that are already doing that, or perhaps are already working on projects, and getting them a little uncomfortable, getting them some resources to actually learn those new skills, but put them in a position to be able to actually tackle those tasks head on. I find personally that's when I've grown the most, is when I've actually struggled and had really difficult problems to solve, or questions that we're trying to answer.
Nice.
I don't know if I have much to add to this. Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add. It's tough. Yeah.
One other thing, I know we're a little short on time too, but it's also, especially if we're looking at developing more junior talent, finding those, maybe you have had the opportunity to bring on like a group of junior talent. It's, getting those individuals involved in projects and seeing who turns to who. This is something that I know that the CEO of SafeGraph has sort of championed, and that's really getting junior talent into situations that require someone to stand up and sort of take on leadership role, and really kind of tapping into that individual and developing them as a leader.
Yeah. Great. We have a few questions kind of from the chat here, so I'll throw a few of those at the group here. One is around spatial data science courses being offered at the universities. Do you work with those university programs? If so, which skills do you value in students that come out of those programs? And then which skills are missing?
One thing that I've seen, and I feel like has been present even in my own education, is I actually want to see that you didn't just go through a program that had you click through a traditional GIS product. That wasn't just you. It actually applied spatial thinking and problem solving, and perhaps a broader group of technologies that you're exposed to. I think some of our more GIS based programs or courses really are just teaching you how to be a button clicker, and we need problem solvers. And not necessarily just a practitioner of a certain product that's on the market.
Yeah, and I've mentioned this before earlier, is that we use Code Academy. It's helped great. They have an entire data science course catalog. We belong to their Business Pro edition, so the entire team has access to it. Most of our team members have completed all of it, like the entire thing, which is a ton of courses and coursework. And what's great though is it's immediately applied, right? If it's doing something like, hey, do a SQL pull from our database, like you got to learn how to do that. And that course absolutely teaches you how to do that. So even with junior talent who don't have that immediate skill set can learn it pretty quickly. And that's what's, I think, exciting just about today's times is there's a lot of access to information. It's just about if you want to have that extreme ownership and go and do it.
Yeah. I think the key here is empathy and communication with the person trying to learn. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach for learning. Like, I personally don't learn really great from watching videos or doing online courses. Those don't work. Building applications is how I learn a new thing, or teaching, like building a talk or developing a blog post around a piece of tech is how I learn new tech things. But like working with your engineering team on like A, what they want to learn, and then B, I mean, you can guide that to solve your business problems, and then B, figuring out how they best want to solve that. Like, do they need time to work on a sample project? Do they want to learn? Do they need to go to a conference like this, right? So empathy and communication with your team around how and what they want to learn, I think, is key.
Yep. And I think, building those skills and having that cross communication is great. And then also carving out space for that. There's another question of like, do you have working hours dedicated to that? And I think we talked a little bit about that. I think, it's something it's hard to, some places carve out a chunk of time that's, every week you're doing skill development. I think others kind of go with the natural ebb and flow of how things are busy or changing within the business. So I think no matter how you do it, providing that space for people to do that. A few other questions. If you have a portfolio, how do you start, building that? Where do you go looking for, people's development and portfolios? I heard GitHub thrown out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to develop a portfolio, I think start with things that you're really interested in, and try to tackle problems or look at ways that other people have been using geospatial science and technology to solve those problems. Put yourself in those places.
Yeah, I mean, GitHub, obviously, but like to Joe's point, if somebody writes a blog post, similar like Matt, like I've seen your blog posts that go really in depth. I mean, blog posts in general, that's another way where somebody can tackle a problem. So even if you're just writing about a problem that you solved, that just shows that you're thinking about it and how you're thinking. And maybe that's a better way too sometimes than GitHub, because GitHub just shows, sometimes like the code and how you think about it versus being able to express it in a written form.
Yeah. In my experience, juniors think too much about the house of their portfolio and not enough about the content of the portfolio. Content is king. I don't give a shit where it's hosted. If you have a self-hosted blog, get a Medium, that's free. Get a GitHub, that's free. If you have enough content to start making a portfolio, make your own. But it doesn't matter, right? Just make cool stuff and share it. Make sure your links work too. That's key, and explaining it well.
Yep. Perfect. We're just at about time here. So I just want to, first of all, thank everyone for participating, both on the panel and in the comments. I really appreciate all of the participation here. If there's anything else, there you can definitely reach us on different channels, but I'm going to turn it back over to the host here. And once again, thank you, everyone.